Goon. It all seemed such a fine idea, promising a clean, green energy future for Australia. But the Gillard government's clean energy program just keeps hitting hurdles. The carbon tax is still in the wars, and the billion-dollar solar flagship program has failed to get off the drawing board, as we reported last week. Now, the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, which is supposed to help kickstart $100 billion of investment, is under fire. Stephen Long reports.
On a grey day, citizens gather in Sydney, campaigning for Australia to harness the power of the sun.
1, 2, 3, big solar!
These folk wonder, why does a nation drenched in sunlight, surrounded by waves and buffeted by wind, burn so much fossil fuel for power?
We're making the choice to support solar.
They want the government's $10 billion plus Clean Energy Finance Corporation to kickstart renewable energy.
Aye 74, no 72. The question is therefore resolved in the affirmative.
The Clean Energy Finance Corporation was part of the deal that finally secured legislation to put a price on carbon emissions. The Greens wanted it. Labor saw it as a way to green up local industry. Its aim is to underwrite new technologies like big solar with great potential that are struggling to get commercial finance. But critics say it's a squandering of taxpayer funds.
The Clean Energy Finance Corporation is a complete waste of money because it will not cut emissions by a single gram of carbon dioxide.
And it's not just the usual suspects criticising the scheme.
While the taxpayer's putting up to $13 billion on the table, it's not actually going to result in an increase in the amount of renewable energy.
Richard Dennis runs a self-described progressive economic think tank, pro-environment, pro-renewable energy. But he says existing policy already obliges power companies to cut their reliance on fossil fuels and source a fifth of their energy from renewable sources by decade's end. So the Clean Energy Finance Corporation could end up merely subsidising them to meet their legal obligations.
In Australia, we've got a 20% renewable energy target for 2020. We've got a statutory mandate to generate 20% of our energy from renewable energy by 2020. But what this policy does is say, well, we'll increase the amount of taxpayer-funded renewable energy, but we're not going to increase the total pool of renewable energy.
So why not simply set the target and let the market decide what technologies to invest in?
Let's just let them work it out themselves. Don't appoint a bunch of investment bankers to spend a lot of money on high salaries for them to then go and try and predict who's the best to deliver these projects. Just set the goals and then let industry work it out amongst themselves.
So far, there's only the vaguest of details about how the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, or CEFC, will operate. The scheme was hastily hatched and announced via press release. The task of filling in the blanks has fallen to Reserve Bank board member and company director Gillian Broadbent. She heads a panel which finalised a report on the Clean Energy Finance Corporation last week. It's yet to be publicly released.
The CEFC needs to come in with policies which are around the general strategy of increasing the total amount of clean energy, not substituting one policy for another.
Garry Weaven is a green energy czar, an ex-union boss who chairs both the Industry Superfund's investment arm, Industry Funds Management, and Pacific Hydro, a global renewable energy company wholly owned by IFM.
If companies were waiting around for the next few years, believing that they could meet renewable energy obligations by getting some government handout under the CEFC, that would be counterproductive. So clearly, when the report comes out from the CEFC, it needs to put that issue to bed.
But the report is unlikely to convince critics who say the very deal the CEFC was part of renders the fund unnecessary.
In Australia from 2015, we'll have an emissions trading scheme that will set a cap on carbon emissions. If you then go on subsidised renewable energies on top of that, you're really just making it cheaper for polluters to cut back their emissions, but you're not really cutting emissions overall because they're predetermined by the emissions trading scheme.
Stephen, if we just look here at a map of Australia, the opportunity and the potential is massive. We've got some of the best renewable resources anywhere in the world.
Kane Thornton couldn't disagree more. He heads the Clean Energy Council, a peak body for clean energy companies.
The opportunity for solar through the northern part of Australia is massive. Wind right through here across the eastern and southern parts of Australia, where I grew up here in Western Victoria, is some of the windiest places in the world. It's a great opportunity for Australia.
But he says government finance is vital to harnessing this potential.
The Clean Energy Finance Corporation is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring forward a whole range of renewable energy technologies and ensure Australia becomes a world leader in renewable technology in the future.
If these technologies are so good, why isn't the private sector funding them? Why do we need government involvement?
Generally because it takes a long-term view to bring these technologies through to fruition, and we know that the private sector has a generally short-term view at the moment, particularly from the global financial crisis, and therefore there is a role for government to take a much longer-term view and see that these technologies are brought through to the market.
There is no need to develop all of these technologies here. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of these technologies are available in China, in Europe, in America, in Japan. All we have to do is we have to pick the best technologies and apply them here.
Not Labor's view. The Climate Change Minister, Greg Combet, wasn't available, but his spokesman said that both a carbon price and the Clean Energy Finance Corp are needed to maximise the long-term benefits of a clean energy economy, overcome market failures and drive innovation. Labor and the Greens see a future where Australia's energy and manufacturing industries are reinvented as clean and green.
We're coming to Parliament House today to call on all members of Parliament to support this new $10 billion fund.
Imagine the cake we'll be cutting when we get the first large-scale solar plant opened in Australia. Indeed.
But there's no consensus about whether the Clean Energy Finance Corporation is a recipe for success or just a half-baked scheme.
Cheers.